Hello and welcome to the Body Align Pro podcast. My name is Isaac Osborne, founder and CEO of Body Align Pro. In this podcast, we interview practitioners who use Body Align Pro and some of the leading experts in the health industry who are committed to taking a scientific approach to improving the form and function of the body and the growth and development of their practice. For more information about Body Align Pro, visit www.bodyalignpro.com. Welcome to the Body Align Pro podcast. Today we have Manny Arragon on the show. We talk about nutrition, structural integration, scoliosis, kettlebell training, working with athletes, and kinesio taping. Manny is a board-certified structural integration practitioner by the International Association of Structural Integrators. He's also trained in multiple nutritional modalities as a nutritionist, adding manual modalities such as kinesio taping and muscle activation technique. He holds a certificate in personal training from NCEP and certifications of instruction from Orange Kettlebell Club Level 1 and KetAcademy. He actively trains and competes in kettlebell sport and represents the Innovative Results Kettlebell team. Very excited to have my friend and colleague Manny on the show. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the show, Manny. I'm so excited to have you on here today. The last podcast I did was either you were interviewing me on your podcast. It was either that or Liz Stewart's podcast. But welcome. This is the very first podcast of Body Align Pro, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. And I just kind of want to start out a little bit about just you telling the viewers what kind of work that you do. Like, what is it that you do? And you can throw in there a little bit how you use Body Align Pro a little bit, but I'm really interested in what you do. Like, what's your day like? Who you work with, that kind of stuff. So run away with that.
Sure. Okay. So for those of you guys who don't know me yet, I'm sure Isaac will throw a bio in somewhere in the notes, or the stuff will leak out here and there. My name is Manny Arragon, and in fact, I've known Isaac for some years now. He was one of my models in my advanced training in Kauai. I was lucky enough to have met him there. And
when was that? That was what, 2003
or 4, something like that.
I think it was actually 2003. I think.
Was it 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have met you amongst another one of my models who I'll probably mention later on. I don't remember her last name, but you probably know her name was Ocean. She was an older woman body worker. Anyway,
that class was in Kauai, and it was Emmett teaching. Who else was teaching that class?
Nilsey, Emmett, and Peter.
Yeah, that was one of the last classes that Peter taught, right?
I think he taught one more after that. He had retired, and then he taught one more. He came back and taught one more. And I remember seeing the listing for that class and thinking, man, like, this is like, when you go to like a music festival and like all your favorite acts are there, the ones that influenced you your whole life. Like, these were the guys. And I'm like, okay, if you threw Neil in the mix, because the next one I believe was with Neil, the last one. If you threw Neil in the mix, it would have been complete, but I had never trained with Emmett. I had met Nilsey before, and but anyway, not to get too off base right now, because so people have something to hold on to in terms of what I do and how I work with people, and hopefully, and I have to apologize ahead of time, I'm not succinct. It's just not my nature. So if I tell stories and they're a little long, I apologize. But that's just, I've accepted as I've gotten older. That's my nature, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for about 19 years, my 19th year now. Primarily, my kind of marquee practice is structural integration. So that I use the 10-session series with all kinds of folks who come into my door. Anywhere.
For those who don't know, like, what is structural integration? Like what is it?
Episode 1.
Throwing you on the spot.
Episode 1 of like 20 to explain this work.
That's all right. Take your time, man.
This has been one of those things over 19 years. I think all practitioners, to some extent, struggle with what exactly we do. But just in a really succinct way, if I could attempt that, would be that people come in and I help them become more aligned in the vertical, the various body parts. And by doing so, we're waking up different parts of the nervous system that have either gone latent or that are overacting and throwing the person off. And they may have habitual patterns or patterns that started even in development in the womb, or patterns of movement that they've learned from, say, their parents, even way back when, injuries that might have occurred along the way. And all of these things kind of conspire to create what Dr. Rolf termed random body. And I even struggled with that term for a while. But random body is a disorganized body. It's a body that struggles in gravity. So I help organize bodies and nervous systems so that the ultimate result is people feel better. Usually they come in because they have some kind of pain or you know.
And how do you organize the body? What do you do to organize the body?
Yeah, well, you know, the first thing that we really start with is by looking. And I think this is where SI work is completely differentiated from almost all others. And I've seen some more modern movement modalities start to draw in this idea of seeing and looking at patterns in the structure. And they may have done it to some extent, but this has really been, I believe, and forgive me if I'm ignorant and somebody else is like a master in this that I've just ignored. But I believe this has been like the one thing that really sets SI apart, because when we start looking at a body, the way we look at a body completely influences how we think about the body, how we see what's going on, understand the patterns, and then go about addressing them.
Right.
And this is, I mean, not to make a direct plug, but this is exactly, I believe, why the imaging is so important, because it helps the learning process for both the client and the practitioner.
The imaging, you're talking about Bodyline Pro.
Bodyline Pro, or before that we had, I forgot what the geek NIH program was that we like kludged together with all kinds of weird equipment and lights, and before that it was the Polaroid camera, right? The initial.
Well, there's people that use this like their iPhone or iPad and or Polaroid cameras, like Rolf used Polaroid cameras. But yeah, go on.
So you could use any of those. It's not required to have the feature set that Bodyline Pro has, but which I have only touched on. So you probably can expand, and hopefully I'll learn something through your series of podcasts about how to go about learning using this more all these rich features, because I just do the photography pretty much.
Well, that's a big part of why I'm starting the podcast, is so I can see so other users can see how other people are using it, and how they're going about it, and I can even go over a little bit of how I use it today too, and just to throw stuff in there as well. But so you're working with the structure of the body, and what are you doing to help change it? Like, is there a certain thing that you're doing to help change the body? Like you said, the 10 sessions, like there's a process of some kind. Like, what are you doing to do that? Like, what happens if I came in and saw you, right? I already know what you do, but if I was Joe Schmo and like I didn't know what you did, and I came in and saw you, it was my first session. Like, what is it that I'm totally throwing you on the hot seat right now.
No, this is great. This is
what would you do? Like, what would you tell me? What would you go over with me? Like, and tell me what am I going to experience? Sure.
Well, first we have a phone call. Almost always. It's very rare that I wouldn't call them and talk to them on the phone. And it helps me and the client do a couple of things. One is it helps me get a feel for what they're looking for, and then whether that fits into my realm. And 99% of the time it does. Occasionally somebody will ask for some really weird thing that I just can't do, or I'll get a prank call from Neil Powers or something weird. But that scares me. But typically, like I said, folks would come in, they would say, let's see, I had a guy call this morning. He's got a back problem. It's been with him for years. Now he's got kids. He wants to get back in the gym because he's been out of shape because his back hurts. So, what are we going to do? And so he's, for example, been to the gym 3 times the last 2 weeks and gone to 8 massages in that time and still is in pain. And luckily got my name from somebody at the gym. And so I said, well, here's how I work with people. And is this something that you think, aligns with what you're looking for? One, he's an athlete already in the past, so that's a plus. So he can already identify. But most people do. They get the concept of movement patterns, habitual patterns, and how that might, perhaps even the legacy of injuries and compensations, and how that might impact the structure. Especially, and again, most people, not everyone, but almost everybody who comes to me has been to somebody else already, or numerous people. I don't know if that's your experience, but for me, I'm like the end of the road. I'm like the last guy before surgery, or or whatever. They pull it off.
Last hope.
Yeah, I'm the last hope, right? Yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah,
so
it's my world too, for sure.
So yeah, right. I think a lot of us are that way because we're, one, just not known. So thank you for helping publicize this work as well, because it's important that people know. However, so the discussion we had centered around, hey, well, I know you're going to the gym. I know you're having these issues. Let's get some. I didn't outline exactly what I was going to do. We just talked in general terms. We're going to help take you through this process of organizing your body and working with those patterns that are there to kind of the random disparate patterns that are in your body, to draw them together into one pattern that's manageable. And then I'm going to show you about what I see in your body structure, the various twists, turns, torsions, etc., and your movement patterns. And we're going to learn about that so that when you're outside of here, my office, you're going to be more aware of that and able to make adjustments to your movement based on also some kind of protocol and coaching that I do, but eventually on your own, so that you don't get back in this situation. We can get you out of it using the structural integration hands-on, using the educational process, and also using the coaching process.
So the structural integration hands-on, like what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with that person, your client, with the hands-on stuff? Like, what exactly is that? I mean, there's people like,
right. So it's a body work like massage, in that we're touching the body. There is, within the 10-session series, there is some kind of general pathway that we follow that Dr. Rolf and others, and through my own experience, or the almost 20 years of practice, have seen tends to produce a certain type of result in the body, getting it more aligned and vertical and moving more easily and such. And asking them for particular types of movement. This is where it might vary from massage, where I might work on a particular area of the body, whether I'm touching, holding, manipulating a tissue, maybe working in a tight spot to free up something, or at a joint, and having them move often in a way that they're not familiar with. So I might say, bend your knee, and when they bend their knee, they bend it out to the side. It rotates, the femur rotates and bends at the side. Well, that's not really an integrated movement. It's a disintegrated movement. So let's figure out how to move that knee in a way, using touch, using verbal cues, and maybe a few tries in different ways to get them to move in a way that is more aligned, that is going to support the more uniform transmission of force through that structure in the joints and such. So there's some of that as well.
So when you're manipulating tissue, are you, am I in my shorts? Am I in my underwear? Are you using oil? Or am I fully clothed? What's going on there?
These are awesome questions, because you're starting from the ground and I'm flying in the clouds here. So thank you. Although I know some practitioners use some minimal lubricant, I don't find that I get the best results with my work that way. Mm-hmm. So for me, having that purchase on the tissue seems to work best. And
the no oil kind of like
Yeah. I ask the client not to put oil or lotion on in the morning after the shower. So there is purchase on that skin. Otherwise we're sliding on the top and we're not really able to work the different layers of tissue or differentiate them. And that's maybe a more advanced concept that we can talk about later, the layering, but not to get too far ahead of myself. But yeah, there's no, the only time I would use a lubricant maybe is when I'm doing intranasal work or intraoral work where the saliva is a lubricant.
Right.
But that makes sense. Those are areas where it makes sense to do it. We don't actually need to get a lot of purchase on the tissue in there.
Right.
Yeah, they're different types of tissues. But what else?
Now you're doing this work, and am I standing? Am I sitting down? Am I lying down?
Yes.
Where are we in this situation here?
The majority of people when they first come in are going to be lying down. I assess them in standing movement, maybe sitting. I might take them through different types of movements, but typically I would have them lying on their back on a table to start. But somebody might come in, they have lumbar compression and they've got some sciatica or whatever. And lying on their back might not be a position that is really comfortable or doable for them. So, or sitting on a bench. So we might actually we might start in standing in some kind of various other posture that I can get them into first. That's I would say more the exception than the rule, but it is something that that comes up for us.
And this is kind of how you actually came to the work, right? Because you came to structural integration, to receive structural integration because of chronic pain from scoliosis, right?
Yeah.
That's how you actually were introduced to the work. Was it one of those things where it was your last hope as well? And it was very effective for you with what you sent me here on your bio about how you got immediate and improved results from the structural integration. Is that that a little bit?
I'm happy to share a little bit of my story for sure. Yeah, I was born with scoliosis, and it tends to progress in the prepubescent and pubescent years. I think at age 9 is when I started seeing an orthopedic doctor, and it wasn't bad enough to brace or do surgery at that time. So they kind of do what they do, which is, well, let's wait till it gets bad enough. I mean, they didn't say that, but that's kind of what they did. So we saw him every quarter or twice a year. I don't remember how many times we saw him, and we just looked at it. And at some point, my mom thought, well, maybe swimming is good because it's a kind of, planar movement using all of your body. In retrospect, yeah, it might be good. Today I would do something completely different. But I did swimming. And then when I was in my 20s, I started getting into martial arts and getting thrown a lot. And it just, your body contracts when you get thrown. And over time, it contracted enough where I was getting persistent pain. 2 ribs essentially were crushing each other, and were pretty painful. So I did what guys do. I was like 24 or something like that. I was like, it'll go away, whatever. And eventually, my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, said, it's not going away. You can't really get comfortable in any position. You can't sleep. What if I call somebody? Would you go? And I said, okay. So she found a chiropractor, and I went to this lady, and she was a good lady. But after a number of visits, she kind of pulled me aside and said, I don't think I'm really going to be the answer for your situation. And she was, I think, a new chiropractor working in another chiropractor's office. So this is the surreptitious pulling me aside and then kind of, thrust a bundle of business cards in my hand and said, don't call them in here, but when you leave, call some of these people and see. Like, she just didn't have a straight referral. She just had probably met some people and was like, gosh, I want to help this guy. And the Rolfer answered the phone. Actually, the structural integrator answered the phone. It was Alish Banjic was my first practitioner. I don't know if you know Alish, but
he's in Europe, isn't he?
Alish is now in Europe, and he was in Santa Cruz at the time.
Wow.
And phenomenal. I lucked out, and I got an amazing human being, practitioner, somebody who I didn't know had just started practicing. So this speaks to the effectiveness of the work and somebody's intention and their pouring out of their heart for the client. And he had maybe less than a year of practice, I believe, under his belt, and dramatically changed my body. Like the sessions, dramatic. 3 sessions, I was not completely out of pain, but enough that it was, I could get comfortable, I could sleep, those types of things. And on the table, I was like, I need to be doing this. I need to be sharing this. So he wasn't the last guy I saw. He was kind of the second guy. But, I would say these days, most of my clients are in their 40s. So, they've had a history of seeing people and stuff. And back then I didn't know anything. I had a good job. It wasn't an issue to just say, yeah, let's do the 10. And then afterwards, Alice thought he could get more. So we did another 10 and so on and so forth. I probably did maybe 40, 45 sessions with him before I went to training, including the advanced training when he did that. The advanced session series.
Cool.
But yeah, huge.
Yeah, changed your life.
Massively. Totally. And I was kind of looking for something to do. I was working in making pharmaceuticals, and it paid well. It was shift work, but I wanted to move to Japan to kind of deepen my studies in martial arts. And I thought, what can I do abroad that I don't need a work visa for? What can I do with all these expatriates who fly in from all over the world who are beating each other up? I could do this. I could earn enough to live and go to class.
Did you have your nutritionist background at that time? Were you a nutritionist at that time?
No, I was still eating like pints of Ben and Jerry's and all kinds of beer and stuff like that. My wife went into acupuncture school around the time I graduated. So that that was kind of good because I had come off of 7 years of graveyard shifts. Going to school, and I was just smoked. My body was just smoked. So a lot of rehab there. And that did help me. I did change some of my eating habits, but probably not until 2007 when I moved down to Orange County, the Bay Area. One of the practitioners in my wife's office was a nutritionist, and we just started seeing her. And again, like dramatically improved my life in a lot of ways, made me kind of realize, what I thought was healthy was not. And
right.
Yeah,
absolutely. So are you at your office right now?
No, I'm actually at home. I'm at home. Today's not a work day for me, so it's an admin. And I was confession. I'm looking around my house going, what's a good background that doesn't have a window behind me, so I'm too dark to see.
So let's go back to the clients and so you're working with these people, and so how do you incorporate Bodyline Pro or the app or imaging? You've been playing with imaging before Bodyline Pro even came out, and why do you use imaging? Like, what's the whole reason behind it?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first started practicing, I used imaging because that's what I was taught in school. And let's see, my first setup was, I think I had the crazy Quadra 800 AV lights, scary lights and all that. And it was intense. So I had all that stuff. And then at some point, it was too unwieldy, or I moved offices or something like that. And so I bought a Sony Mavic digital camera with the 3.5 inch floppy. It was like one of the first digital cameras that was popular. And that one, it didn't do the overlaying that the NIH program did, but it gave a picture, and that's all I really wanted at the time. And just as an aside, the really cool thing about that I discovered and learned by using that Mavic, and I did them all in black and white so you could just see better, was that it pixelated a little bit. It pixelated enough so that you could actually see, and here's where the woo-woo part comes in, you could actually start to see the energy fields around a person. And then from session to session to session, you could watch it get more and more distinct and organized and dense. It was very, very interesting. And at first I thought, it's just pixelation. And then it struck me, and I thought, well, no, it's picking up something, right? There's some kind of light interference in there. It's picking something up, and it's very clearly, it wasn't like it happened once or twice. It was very consistent. Every single client. Kind of like the other part that I learned from that was looking at session 2 before and after and realizing, my God, the cranium's getting longer, and I've only worked on their feet and legs. Like, it's amazing. You know, I believed Emmett and those guys when they told me, but to see it consistently over and over, that's where you go, no, this isn't an aberration, which I think sometimes people say when they get photos. They're like, yeah, but that was that day or whatever. No, when you're consistent, you can show a pattern of it. It's not that day.
Right.
It's not that day.
Especially if you're really consistent with placing the camera in the same spot every time.
I need a bigger room. Yeah. But I admire your camera placement and to see that.
I actually just recently was talking with another practitioner, kind of came up with a possible solution for that.
Wall bracket?
Huh?
Wall bracket?
Yeah, you just place the square shot right on a wall. And then the app has the reverse camera.
Yeah. And
just use the reverse camera feature.
Yeah, so that was a thought I had, was just kind of like putting it on a swing arm that it comes out and locks.
Yeah.
I could fold it flat and it would be consistent or relatively consistent. But hey, why not make it part of Square Shot?
Yeah, the wall bracket.
Right? Wall bracket. Right. Yeah. I don't know. Might not be worth your trouble.
A little bit more time, maybe. Maybe you can come up with, or someone else can come up with an adapter.
Tell you what, I'll work it out, and then I'll consult with you on that, and hopefully there's some kind of. It's kind of like the IKEA standing desk solution that you find online, where they have $30 for a standing desk. This is actually taking place right now on my $30 cardboard box fold-out standing desk.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I have my desk over here that is sitting or standing. And I'm sitting right now. I'm on the Rolf bench, and I had to go next to my window so that the lighting was better. But so when you take photos of somebody, what are your clients' reactions to that? Like, what do they think about the photos? Or some of them ask you why you're taking photos. And when you take photos, if you were to take photos of me, what would we do after we take the photos?
Sure. So there was a time where I stopped taking them in between Bodyline Pro and my Mavic camera. It was a number of years, probably like maybe 10 years. I didn't take photos, 8 years. It was a long time. I think I was sharing offices, or I just couldn't have it set up. It was too complicated. So, and I didn't feel like at that time, I felt like I was focusing too much on the photos and showing the clients the befores and afters, and maybe feeling like I was trying to sell them on the next session at that time. So now I run packages, so I don't worry about selling the next session. It's taking that out of it. I do the photos again. I started actually before Bodyline Pro. I started doing it with my iPhone, and what I tell clients is in the first session, they come and they sit down. We have about a half hour to 45 minutes to talk and also do a session.
Can you pause there for a second?
Yep.
I'm really curious as to why you actually started doing photos again. What was it that made you want to do photos again?
I think it was, I'm trying to remember, but I believe it was, I just started feeling more compassion for the client, and that, and then I remember what it was like when we were in school and got our photos, and people would put them up in their house and show them to other people, and it was just kind of an exciting way to share this process, and and then they have the option. Hey, do you want to share or not? Whatever, you can have your. I'm happy. So I would send them, copies or print them out before Bodyline Pro came out. But it was, and then sometimes also for educational purposes where I felt where my words perhaps weren't sufficient, or I just wasn't able to fully feel like I was communicating what I was seeing in a person's body. As I started to work more and more with movement, I was and with movement professionals and people in sports, athletics, and things like that, who were more familiar with it. A lot of them believe they know a lot about movement, and because they've done it for so long, but to show them something that they've, otherwise it's your word against them. When you show them, then it's kind of like proof. You're going, okay, here's some proof that with what I'm saying and what I see. And then when they see it, it's like, wow, okay. And they can really work with it. And I think long-term, because I think about my own process and the educational process of learning my own patterns, that's been more beneficial to me over time, outside of getting sessions, over the 1 years I've been getting this work, that I'm aware of my body and the way I use it every day and how I feel and what I'm doing. So those learning about that is so important, and it's changed my body dramatically. So way more than any of the sessions. So if I could help somebody get that, then I don't know. I maybe rethought my practice in some way, or it just dawned on me because took me a while to figure that out.
So I think that what you were saying, that because that's been my experience as well. Like when I take photos of somebody and I show them the photos, it's usually, oh my gosh, I had no idea it looked so bad, or I didn't realize my shoulder was so low, or any of that kind of stuff. So like you said earlier, they're just usually taking your word for it if you're pointing that out without photos. And so they're really having to trust you immensely, in what your word is. And if they're a brand new client, that can kind of be iffy, So when they see the photos, and so you're educating them with photos and videos too?
Occasionally, depending on the client, but I don't use videos consistently. So that's an area potentially for improvement.
And when you're working with your clients and you're taking some photos, and how do you do that? Do you do before the session, right after the session, or before the session and before the next session?
Yeah, before and after. So beginning and end. So yeah, beginning and end. But one thing I wanted to add to you were talking about using the imaging with the client to educate, is that there's different kinds of learners, right? And some people are more visual than others. So having that, if we're using our words, we're using our touch, we're using descriptions, we're asking them to move, and we're using visual photos or videos, then we're pretty much hitting all the different types of learning. And even if they're one type and it's not necessarily visual, it helps to reinforce sometimes. Say they're a feeler, they're a kinesthetic learner. Then great, they'll learn a lot from and they'll probably get up and tell you, like, I feel like this laundry list of things, which is great for kinesthetic folks. But you're right, it's just another layer of education, and it just reinforces that. So it is, when you think about it a little more systematically, it is really actually quite significant to have that additional piece, and then what you can do with it. Like, hey, this is something that we could potentially change. Like, were you aware of that?
So, it'd be fun right now. It would be really fun right now is if we could bring up one of your clients.
Sure.
And we could talk about what you see in that client.
All right.
And in the, you have a before and after session that, well, we talked before we started the call, we talked that you have 3 people that we could possibly go over.
Yep.
So bring up one of the people, and we can talk about what you see when you look at a photo.
So this is a client of mine. Actually, this is one of the head trainer at a gym I train at. And, he is so the history of his body is, I believe he was in Desert Storm, various other activities as a Marine for many years. Got out, founded a gym, and see, look at that. He's been an athlete for most of his life. And this particular time when I started seeing him, he was one of the top-ranked kettlebell sport athletes in the United States in the professional class, and was competing internationally at world championships and such. And he had run into some problems with his shoulder and hip. I believe it was left shoulder, right hip. So anyway, I do what I do. I was like, well, you got to come and see me. I mean, I didn't know about the problems till he came in, but I just can't help but want to work with people. So So he came in and we worked over a period of time, and I'll kind of show you the kind of dramatic difference change. This is over, I don't know how many sessions, it was a number of sessions. But the front shot, if we just look at him right now, you can kind of see, without even using any of the vertical or horizontal bars here, you can kind of see that his left shoulder is a little higher than his right. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
And if you look at his, left side of his torso in general, it's a little shorter. He's kind of longer on the right, shorter on the left, and then you go and look at his legs, and if you notice, the direction that the knees are pointing is quite different. Mm-hmm. The contour of the ankle, down by the ankle, the lower part of the lower leg prior to where it goes to the malleolus, you could see on the left side it's quite curved, on the right side it's a little more straight. Mm-hmm. It's like he might be putting his weight a little more on the inside of the right foot, right heel, and such. Anyhow, long story short, I went and watched him in competition to see how he moved, and I saw some torsional patterns that were accentuated, ones that I saw in the office, because you put 140 pounds, overhead numerous times, all of a sudden you're going to put the body under immense strain. The patterns just pop right out. Right. So it's pretty cool. So he was having a real big problem with his shoulder, constant injury, couldn't get his right hip under here. I don't know what he's doing. His toes are up a little bit, but you can see there's a huge difference between this initial photo. If you just look at his shoulders and his torso, and even that right pec, which is considerably lower than the left. Mm-hmm. And here, it's evened out a lot.
Correct. Yeah.
It's evened out a lot. And for him, what that meant for him was he was able to train injury-free or not experience pain and limitation in his body movement. So,
what about the other sides of his body?
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at that, because it's always fun to look at the profile. So here you see he's way forward. I don't know that we'll see what happens on the after, but these guys are like in the gym all day long. They tend to be forward on their feet. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep them on their heels. It really is hard to keep them with the consistent training. But if we just look at, say, the contour of the front of his chest down to his navel, where the pants start, and the back of the torso as well, mm-hmm. and just look at that curvature there, and then kind of compare it to here.
Yeah. And
my camera is not in the same place like yours, so it's not as seamless. But you can, it's a huge difference.
You can tell how much his pelvis is shifted back towards his hip joints more over his ankles. Right?
Yeah, here he's in a big arc to balance himself out. Looks like a surfer, mm-hmm. Like a hanging 10 on a longboard or something. Right. And then here, boom, he's like, maybe a little bit too much on his heels, so his toes are light. Mm-hmm. He's trying too hard here. But still, even despite that would just add duress to his structure, what he's doing with his feet. Right. It still looks way, way better. You're right. The pelvis is massively different. So,
and that's huge to be able to get someone's pelvis shifted over their ankles can, just dramatically changes dramatically decreases the strain in the body. To be able
absolutely. And consider that when he's lifting his weight, he's in his rest position. Can you see me right now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me see. Are you able to see my torso a little bit if I come back here? He's resting his elbows on his ASIS, like right here, right inside the ASIS, right inside the hip bone.
Right.
And so that's his resting position. So he has to be balanced over his feet. So that's actually so that the muscles aren't contracted in that position. It's a very difficult position to balance it. So this really makes a difference for him.
Yeah, the strain that he was probably putting on his spine was pretty dramatic, having that forward positioning in his posture. What's interesting is that when kind of speaking to what you were saying earlier about how you're helping changing the patterns of the body. And when I'm talking to my clients, I typically say, what we're seeing here is a snapshot of your current muscle memory coordination pattern. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're seeing how your resting point in gravity is affecting your whole structure. Mm-hmm. And And just to have that resting point, the muscle memory and coordination pattern to change to this, what it's at right now, speaking to what we were saying earlier, dramatically decreases the strain on the spine.
For sure.
If you do that, then a lot of the other joints are going to work more appropriately in relationship to the spine.
That's absolutely. And one thing that I didn't mention yet is that he had a very old injury in his thoracic spine.
Was it upper thoracic or lower thoracic? Just curious.
Trying to remember. Maybe T9, T10, somewhere in there.
Right in the right in the LDH or the lumbar thoracic.
Yeah, a little below it, maybe. Just it's like I think he had fallen on something, or I don't remember the circumstances, but or maybe it was a weightlifting injury. I can't remember. I think it was. He lifted something that was way too heavy. He was doing a podcast with a buddy, videoing, and he just didn't warm himself up and think about it. He went for it, and boom, and he had that injury for years and years and years.
Now, what I'm curious about is something that I have is really fun for me to observe in my own practice is that. So before you took this photo of him, this second photo here, this is obviously not on the same day. You have January 23rd and March 9th.
Right.
And by that point, was he feeling better in his body?
Well, this is actually, I believe, a year later.
A year later. Okay.
Yeah. So we had done a number of sessions over the year, and maybe 10 or 11 or 12. It wasn't consistent because he's a super busy guy. But this is the end point. The last time I saw him in my office was this. So.
And
yeah.
do you remember a kind of just overview in a sense, like how he was feeling?
Yeah, well, I mean, it made him dramatic. I mean, the beauty movement people is they'll get up and tell you what they feel, and they can feel even this guy who's like a hardcore Marine for all these years, and and into kind of macho training and all that, feels a lot in his body. It's really consistent because I think athletes and movement professionals are moving so often, and he's also a student, a kind of extensive student of movement as well. So spent a lot of time in seminars and trainings and things like that, teaching himself to feel. So what we started with was kind of like these big things like my shoulder and my hip and my back. But we got more into the just that feeling verticality and freedom and openness. And there's just so much more. So I don't recall all of the details, but those are the types of things I can remember that came out.
What was his reaction when he saw the before photo and then saw this photo?
Trainers tend to be pretty enthusiastic about everything. So he was like, but he was stoked. He was totally, so he was like, oh, that's awesome. These guys are like, they're happy. They're moving all the time. They're doing what the body was intended to do, which is move and.
I was almost kind of like leading the witness there. Like I was hoping, like one of the things that I experience when I'm working with people is sometimes what happens is they'll feel better, but they actually don't, especially if you're working with pain a lot. And I know you work with pain a lot.
Yeah.
Is that they'll come in like, yeah, I feel better. And then they see their photos and they see the improvement, like, and they feel even more, they even feel even more better, Yeah. It's interesting. I was just wondering if that was your experience as well with this guy or maybe other clients.
He's kind of an outlier because I think, and I don't think I treated him like a normal client because he was not. And I knew him very well also from the gym. So the relationship's a little bit different. So I might have, for example, broached topics that I might not have broached with a typical client. Right. Again, I've learned over time that the more movement or athletic a person is, especially when they're training others, they tend to be even more aware of their movement. But all of my my athletes who move a lot, triathletes, runners, long distance swimmers, I would say not as much straight cyclists. They tend to ignore their feeling and pain a lot. Maybe that's the machine interface part, but the triathletes and those guys, they can feel in their body, and their bodies are just different. So they're kind of outliers to begin with. But they also appreciate it because you're doing all this repetitive motion constantly. So you're constantly focusing on your form, what's going on with your body, your internal feelings, and so on and so forth. So
right. So I want to also kind of touch base on the other case studies that you have that you wanted to show. Are they all with structural integration? Because I know that you also do you're a personal trainer, right? And you do rock tape, and
I have various different things that I use, but I would say mostly it's SI work. I do movement training under the guise of personal training. That's kind of why I got my certification, was to be able to do that in a more public setting outside of my office.
Right.
And then since I've been kind of involved heavily in kettlebell sport, I've started to train some people in that as well. And I wanted to have some kind of official certification, insurance, and credentials for that. So
have you sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Have you played with the rock tape in like doing before and after videos of range of motion? Say, because I know that we've talked in the past, and you had, I don't know, it was like 2-3 years ago, you had I think an ankle injury or something come up, and you rock taped it, and you felt completely different. Your movement felt completely different. I was just curious if you've done that with with a video. If you've say this lady, for instance, she comes in with something, you video her gait or you video her squat, and then you do your rock tape, and then you video that movement again, and if there's any difference.
Yeah, see, I think that would be really neat. And with the folks that I'm kind of showcasing today, that's something I could totally do. I don't necessarily do that in most of my clients come to me for structural integration. So what I found is, though periodically I'll add in something or use another tool, I don't necessarily mix them in session. I just found that it works better for the client and for myself when I don't. Mm-hmm. So I haven't done standalone. I mean, the short is I haven't done standalone befores and afters with tape. It's been fairly kinesthetic, but that's fascinating. I think it'd be really neat. And maybe that's something I can do, with my regulars who are in, because I like this woman, for example. I see her on she's another trainer. I see her on a regular enough basis where, in the relationship we have, is that I can pretty much do whatever I need to do with her. Whereas my typical SI client who calls me from a referral or from the internet or something, I'm going to be doing SI with them. Pretty much. So, but that's a great, I'd love, actually, what would be fascinating, Isaac, is just even hearing that. I didn't really cross my mind to do that. So it'd be neat to maybe do that as some kind of collaborative project with other practitioners and just see. That way, it's not just me doing my couple people here and there, but you do a couple people here and there, I do a couple people in there. We have maybe 3-4 practitioners who are hip to this thing, who'd be willing to do that. Pretty soon we could build up a nice little research database, or for this type of thing.
You'd have to teach me how to rock tape first, though. I don't know.
Nothing formal. Oh yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I've been meaning to come up to SB anyway and learn more about the features on the camera. So that's something we could do. And rock taping is really not that difficult when you understand the body and the patterns.
Yeah.
Anatomy trains, for example, they pull right from anatomy trains.
Yeah, I follow a couple of people on Instagram and Facebook that are do rock tape, and it's very interesting stuff. I'm interested in it. So
yeah,
would love to.
It's all brain science.
So yeah, absolutely.
It's all brain science. So it goes right to that. So if you're hip to that, then you already know kind of like the premise, and then it's just a matter of a couple different ways to apply it.
Right. So tell me about this lady. We only have, I want to be really respectful of your time, and I'm coming up short here about, I know you're at the most have about maybe 10 minutes. So
sure. So let's see. So Aubrey's a trainer. She'd been seeing me for some time prior to this, but we were doing mostly muscle activation technique as a separate thing, just to look at muscular imbalances. And I was curious at that time, although sadly I did not photograph those sessions, to see what structural impact using the MAT would have as an SI practitioner, because they have their own assessment method. But it's not like they think about bodies maybe a little bit like we do, but they don't look at bodies the way we do. Yeah. So I thought it would be fascinating to weave that in with the SI looking the way we look at bodies, and try and get structural changes in the body using tape, like we were saying, or not tape, using MAT, which is, again, another brain science thing. Supposedly there's some muscular fiber changes, but that's what they say. But we know Dr. Rolf talked about fascia being, broken down for years, and now we're not so sure if that's possible or not. So, so again, this is where it's real exciting, because all this stuff's converging. Anyway, so for this we did, I think we did 3 sessions of SI work. She had recently dislocated her left shoulder partially. She was in this position on a rock wall. She kind of changed positions and just overstrained it and had too much force on it, pulled out. So I was hesitant to do any work in her shoulders. I wanted them to set, and she had other rehab she was doing, working with other practitioners and doing her own movement work with that. So with her, we did primarily abdominal work, because that was an area, lower abdominal functionality was really challenging for her. So her upper abdominals, middle abdominals, and then we're talking about rectus. And so this was more of an experimental thing to just see, well, what happens. So, whoops, I can't hit it on this screen. It's going to be on the phone. Sorry about that. So you just maybe you can just say what you see here. This is before. And what's different here?
Well, look, to me, it looks like there's a lot of rib decompression, and you can see the position of her elbows changed pretty dramatically because of the shoulder. I mean, if I talk technically about it, whenever there's decompression of the rib cage, the shoulder blades or the scapula free up. And, the more free that you can get the rib cage, the more free that the scapulas can get. So I really see, her hand position, her wrist position, her lower arm position change. It looks like that right shoulder and the left shoulder come up a little bit towards her ears. She's really depressing her shoulders before, as opposed to the after. Yeah,
you're right. She's gotten some length in that upper thorax, hasn't she? Yeah, interesting. I didn't notice that. I probably did a little bit of work on her lower, above the costal arch and her lower front ribs, and for sure on the back side of the body. Freeing up the vertical structures, the various layers of stuff on the back of the torso.
What does her left side look like?
Let's see, left side. There's the left.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you just even look at the angle of the bra at the bottom and the pants, and then you kind of like see it's totally changed. Like she's horizontalized a little bit, lengthened out her torso a bit. Even the contour of the front of the torso has changed there. See here, it just looks crowded and kind of sticking out. And she's got some length there, a little more ease in the middle, like she's gained kind of an area right in the middle of her torso.
Yeah. What I see when I see like her manubrium and her sternum, right, and the chest, and then right around, say, T8, T9, if you drew a line from the sternum to T8 to T9, the internal space in there increased in the after photo.
Oh yeah, you're right. This is what's so cool about talking with other practitioners, because we look at different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. And yet we get positive results for our clients. Like, this is the beauty of the SI.
Yeah.
It's like a philosophy and a modality rather than an absolute. It's not a technique.
Yeah.
This is a way of looking and working. So fascinating.
So much fun. Love it.
So do you want to look at another side or the back? Or,
let's check out our back.
Okay. Okay, so here's before.
Yeah, look, that's awesome.
Look at the arms, right? Yeah, she gets freedom with her shoulders.
But look at the LDH in the 12th rib area, how it comes out. You know, that when the spine can come back towards you like that, you're creating so much more balance.
Length of the front of the spine and the thorax.
Yeah, invoking so much more internal balance in the structure. The intrinsic balance, really.
I was describing that to a client yesterday. He came in, he's maybe session 5, and he disclosed to me, which I found out kind of because his complaint. He said he had hurt his back, and an old injury had come back, and I thought, oh, geez, that's a bummer. You know, what happened? And he said, well, I've been seeing a massage therapist outside in the middle of between our sessions, which I had asked him not to. And the guy had really wailed on that 12th rib area, and he was in persistent pain from this thing. So I kind of described, so he said, please don't touch it because it's very tender. But great, we're going to work around it, but we're going to release the strain that's on that area. And at the end of the session, he got up and he was like, you're right, this is really, and that's exactly what we did. 5th session, right? So we got him length really in his, first of all, we equalized his pelvis because there was one hip was a little higher. That was a persistent problem. But the second thing was getting him the length in the front of his spine, mid-thorax, and just release the pressure on that area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, getting that rib cage, I call it rib cage decompression. It does so much good things for the spine and the shoulder blades and the neck too, and the pelvis. But I mean, it interrelates with all of them. But it's a fundamental, in my opinion, for really helping people relate their joints better to their body, relate their joints to their spines, like the shoulder joint, the hip joint, knee joint, all that stuff to the spine. Awesome, man.
Yeah, so one more note on this, I just want to add just a kind of overall impression. When I look at the difference between this picture, the first, and the last, one thing that really pops out for me is that the arms and the legs both come from away from the body to closer to the center of the body. Yes. And so just, again, without being too technical on this, what this looks like to me when I see this change is that here, they're coming out of the body kind of almost to support her in space because she just doesn't have the internal support. Mm-hmm. And then they come more towards center here as that internal support has come about. And it's almost like, is it the chicken or the egg? They kind of go together. You can't say, I'd be hesitant to say right now that only the arms and the legs contributed to this, because you could work arms and legs and get changes in the torso, or work the torso and get changes in the arms and legs. It can happen different ways, I suppose, for different people. But that's something that just strikes me here. She's almost like, when you look at the difference, the overall impression is she's kind of like, whoa, I'm kind of balancing here. Mm-hmm. And here, she just looks more relaxed and centered.
Awesome.
An easier place. I wanted to ask you about something.
Well, let me ask one thing before you ask me.
Yep.
How did her shoulder feel after? Because you said this is after 3 sessions. It's one thing to see the changes.
Yep.
Typically, when there is changes, in my experience, it's rare that when you see changes like this, that the symptomology of the whatever pain pattern they have it's rare that pain pattern doesn't go away to some extent, some percentage. So just out of curiosity, what was, the feeling in her shoulder before and after these sessions?
So first of all, I don't want to take all the credit because she's doing a number of things. So both my wife and I, she's under our care. We counseled her on various things that she had access to that were either inexpensive or resources that she knows from the gym. And she was extremely persistent in making sure that she took care of herself. So one, she's like 25, so she's, healing like a werewolf, compared to like me, old guy. And then two, she really took it to heart because this is her job. She had to really, be fit. So she didn't put her arm in a sling ever. She consistently was using movement, various different ranges of motion, even putting various types of force through the joint in ways that would support the joint itself, but not stress it where it would tend to weaken the joint capsule. Getting lots of activation of the lats. So lat activation was a big one. We worked a lot on that. She's done, cryotherapy. She's done acupuncture. She's done herbs. She's done all kinds of different stuff. So I don't want to take all the credit, but she's healing like crazy. Like she's really down to the last few degrees of range of motion. She feels no pain in her shoulder. After like a week and a half, she was out of pain. It wasn't a lot. It was momentarily painful, and then it was low level painful, but she healed very, very quickly. So she made it her job to heal.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Regardless if it, like you said, the credit, the fact that you're a part of the cog of the wheel,
yep,
is a wonderful thing to be a part of, and I'm always grateful to be a part of it. And we never know exactly if we're the total influence on it. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is how she feels about her body. If she's improving, she's gaining strength, she's gaining all those things that she came to see you about, And
for me, when I every client is unique, and I like working with them their own individual way. But for people who are caretakers for other people, I feel a special sense of obligation. I have a PT that I'm seeing, has been a PT for 5 years maybe, and was almost unable to work, like literally wondering if she could complete her day of sessions. And my goal, just like with Aubrey, was this is my top level goal, to get you functional so you can keep helping people on the level you do, because that will magnify my effectiveness and the way I impact society and all that. So
super stoked to have you on the show today, Manny, and I really appreciate you taking the time and and being able to share your clients and your knowledge with me and with all the viewers. Hopefully this can be something people get something out of. And I really want to you're in Orange County. The name of your business is the Rolf Workshop. Do you want to put any contact info in this, links
Sure.
to your websites, to your podcast? You have a great podcast. So I would love to put all that stuff in here, and I'm going to put this on YouTube, so you're going to be able to do whatever you want with this video as well. And I can put all the links to your business in there as well. Phone numbers, emails, anything you want to put in there. You just let me know what you want.
Yeah, I'll send it all out. I'll just put my website on there, therolfworkshop.com. It's got a link to the blog that has the podcast and all that. So my other training space, Innovative Results, is where I do my personal training, kettlebell work and such. Mm-hmm. I'll put all that stuff in there. Excellent resources for Orange County. For anybody who is down here, whether or not you're interested in this work, if any part of this draws your curiosity and questions, or just want to come and visit me at the gym or my office, reach out. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about helping people and building community and all that. So thank you so much for having me. It's always fun. And I'm just always stoked to see what new stuff you're coming up with and doing. And yeah.
I can't wait to show you the new version of the app. You're going to be stoked.
Awesome. Can't wait.
And the other thing was, what did I want? I wanted to say, as a testimonial for you, receiving your work, receiving the 10 sessions from you when I did it, I think back in 2003. This guy has excellent hands. Love your work, and I'm so excited that we have kind of merged back into collaboration, so to speak, from back then, because I really enjoyed your work, enjoyed talking to you, because I've loved martial arts, and we talked about martial arts when you were working with me, and just stoked to be connected with you again, and what you're doing with the app and everything else, man. Thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it, and let's talk again soon. Let's come up here and let's do a video together.
Love to. I just got to put my money where my mouth is. But I'm honored. I'm honored to have met you and do all this. See where this relationship has gone. It's been pretty cool. So thank you as well.
Come up and let's play with some rock tape.
All right, let's do it. We'll make some videos.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Okay, all the best.
Okay, bye.
For more information about Bodyline Pro, visit www.bodyalignpro.com. You can download the app for free on the App Store or Google Play. If you are enjoying this, please be sure to subscribe so you can get each new episode as soon as it's available. Once again, thanks for watching.